So I have some more thoughts on the purity culture. By the way, my name's Timmy. I'm former evangelical fundamental Bible thumping, tongue talking pastor. Now I've been liberated, and I would consider myself agnostic. I would say I'm atheist as it relates to the Bible God. But is there something out there? I don't know. What's after this life? I don't know. Right? I've never died and spent time anywhere else. I don't have video footage. No one does of what's after this. So who knows? And sure as the world turns, though, an ancient book isn't going to have the corner market on truth either. All right. So I want to follow up on a little bit about the purity culture. I was talking to my wife this morning over breakfast, and I've been, I don't know what the word is, not conflicted, but in this deconstruction process that I've been in for heavily, I would say the last 6 years of my life. Um, Clearly, the deconstruction process began in a different way earlier, and if you watch my other videos, I've talked a lot about that, how I was conservative and then progressive, seeker, and more liberal in my theology, and I just kept moving down the road. So, really at the time of kind of leaving that fundamental conservative, the Bible's literally true, it's inspired, it's God breathed. As I began to walk away from that, I would say that probably was the beginning of my deconstruction, if you will, from fundamental evangelical faith. But the last 6 years, I you know, completely left that Christian worldview. But in my reconstruction and in just I spent 48 years as a Christian. So my worldview, my thoughts, my ideas, everything about me was very Christian. And so I would even say now I'm still working through some of the Christian views that I have that maybe I don't realize are attached to any kind of a Christian perspective, but maybe they are, even though like it's not blatantly so. Because sometimes I'll say, here's what I think. Now that doesn't mean, it has nothing to do with my religious or my former religious upbringing. This is just what I think. Well, I think in all honesty, that religion, clearly Christianity has influenced not just my life, but culture in general, like overall. So, I don't think this is just a Timmy problem. I think that all of us have been um, impacted in some way by the Christian story. I mean, hello, Christmas, Easter. I mean, come on, these are like huge, big, culturally recognized holidays that celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, celebrate the birth of Jesus. So, okay. But the thing that I was talking to my wife about this morning, because this is what I'm letting you in behind the scenes here. I'm letting you into just where I'm at currently in my deconstruction, reconstruction process, just to give you a little glimpse of, hey, it's a journey, man. Life is a journey. And what I think right now might change. I might in the future, because I'm going to be doing videos for as long as I'm alive. Like next year, I might be saying some things that are different from what I'm saying now. Now, I'm just going to confess. Don't worry, I'm not going back to Christianity. That ain't happening. Absolutely, that's not happening. But just what I mean about understanding the world and morality and immorality and right and wrong and all of that stuff, which is what I touched on. I did another video. This one might replace it. So you're thinking, what video are you talking about? That might be because I never ended up posting it, because I'm going to recover the information here. But I may just throw it up just so it's out there. If you care to hear my kind of just my initial few thoughts about morality, because sitting at the breakfast table with my wife. We're drinking some coffee, we're eating breakfast. And I said, how do we know what is moral when it comes to sexuality? Because, I was raised Christian. So clearly I don't think this now, but early on, well, what's moral? One man with one woman. And they can't be, getting naked with each other until they're married. That's moral, right? Wait until you're married before you engage in intimacy. That's moral. Well, obviously I don't think that now, but where is the moral line? Like, can 10 people gather in a house, 5 guys, 5 girls, and can they engage in intimacy with each other and with others and at the same time? And like, is that moral? Right? Here's where I'm at. Like, when I first think that, like, in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds immoral. But is it? Like, is that immoral if they're all consenting adults? They're all agreeing that, hey, we want to be a part of this orgy? Like, is that immoral? Is it moral? Cuss and discuss this below. I'm kind of asking some questions. I mean, I have my own thoughts here, clearly, but when I think about it, I'm like, that I guess if it's consensual, why would it be not? I mean, come on. If there just so happens to be any Christians listening to this, just hush your little mouths, because it's so irritating when you talk about a biblical view of marriage. Come on. Have you not read the Bible? David had hundreds of women, harems. Like, come on. The Bathsheba story? Come on. Stop with your ridiculousness of what the Bible has. The Bible is incredibly immoral in what Christians think is moral. And I don't even want to get into that. I don't want to start opening up the script. Just read the Bible. Just go through the Old Testament. Okay? Just read it. Okay? There is just some crazy stuff in there. Not just crazy interactions between people, crazy laws that people thought were the God's laws, but just what God did. Opening up the earth, swallowing up people, even though none of that's true. I mean, none of that's true. Maybe there was like an earthquake or something and that they're saying it was God. Obviously, I don't believe any of that is true, like factually true. But if you read the Bible, it says that God did this, or God commanded to go kill everybody, men, women, and children. Oh, but you can keep the virgins. Keep the virgins. Oh, really? Do you think that was God's idea, or was that possibly man saying, oh yeah, God said keep the virgins? Okay. All right. Back to morality. How do we determine morality? Right? Like, for me, what's right for you might not be right for me, right? Like, I'm heterosexual and I'm in a monogamous marriage with my wife. So what's right though for my friend Chad, who's gay? Like, well, what's right for him isn't right for me. I'm not gay. Like, so for me, it's my wife, but for him, it's his husband. So how do you determine right from wrong, good from bad? And this is where I am in my journey now, is really trying to understand morality, and outside of, well, the Bible gives us the truth. The Bible gives us morality. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. No, it doesn't. And not only that, but just because if the Bible says that you should do this, does that mean you should? Because there's things in the Bible that we could tell you and read to you that the Bible says you should do this. If someone steals something, cut their hands off. If a woman commits adultery, stone her to death. So clearly we're not getting morals from the Bible that are anything in today's culture that are updated. Hello, the Bible supports slavery. For Pete's sakes, I don't know how in the world Christians try to do mental gymnastics to somehow defend the Bible when it is so clearly, absolutely clearly in support of slavery. And at the very least, you can't argue with this. I don't care who you are, you can't spin out of this. At least the Bible, at the very minimum, does not condemn slavery. It doesn't condemn it. It tells you how to treat your slaves. Okay? So stop being silly. Stop trying to do the mental gymnastics to make sense of something. Because listen, we talk about moral relativity or morality as subjective, moral relativity. Hello. We would all agree, okay? You would agree, I would agree, we all would agree, is slavery immoral or slavery wrong? All of us would agree, yes, slavery is wrong. Then why in the world did the Bible, God, if you believe God wrote the Bible, okay, I'm trying to argue with your belief system here. You believe that God wrote the Bible. Then why wouldn't have God just said, hey guys, by the way, we've said adultery's wrong, we've said murder's wrong. Guess what? You shouldn't own slaves either. You shouldn't own other humans. That's not right. You should stop that. It's that would be so easy. Just say it. Just if you're, that's, but listen, obviously the Bible wasn't written by God. God didn't write the Bible. And I know Christians go, I know, Timmy, God didn't write the Bible. It was man that was inspired by God. Okay. Humans didn't write the Bible who were inspired by God. They were inspired by their own minds, their own heads, their own thoughts. Clearly, just read it. It is so obvious that the Bible is a human document. It is absolutely just as clear as a bell. For so many reasons. There's nothing in there that tells us about cosmology. There's nothing in there that tells us about, like I said, wash your hands before you deliver a baby, how important it is to maintain teeth health. There's so many that, hey, by the way, guys, that shaking of the earth, that wasn't me passing gas. That was what we call an earthquake. Okay, I'm not crying. That's not why it's raining. It's raining because clouds, precipitation, right? If the Bible was written by an all-knowing, omniscient, divine being, don't you think he would have known all that stuff and that we wouldn't have to figure it out later? Okay, I'm sure Christians have a mental gymnastics little breakdancing move they can do there to make that make sense, to fit into the worldview that they have. Anyway, back to my conversation with my wife over breakfast. What is moral? Is it okay with one man to be with 7 women, 8 women, or one woman to want to be with 9 men? Is that, if everybody's consenting adults here, and on and on. Things are just weird. Okay, I'm going to bring up something because I know a lot of things are just culturally true, okay? Culturally. And I learned this on my trip to Europe. Here in the States, circumcision is normal. It's just normal. And so uncircumcision, or someone not circumcised, that seems or looks normal, or doesn't look normal, okay? For us, in America, circumcision, to be circumcised, is normal for the most part. It's culturally acceptable. Most people in America are circumcised. Therefore, that's what looks, I'm talking about the member there, right? That would look normal, okay? An uncircumcised member doesn't look normal to those Americans. Okay. Now, and I know this because I was talking to a woman about this the other day, and she's like, "Oh, uncircumcised. That's just gross. That looks gross looking." Ugh. And I thought, well, it's a good thing you don't live in Europe, because in Europe it's the opposite. In Europe, most people aren't circumcised. So an uncircumcised member would look normal to those in Europe. That's what they're used to. That's what looks normal to them. That's what looks good or whatever. And a circumcised member would look weird. It would be different because it's not very common in Europe. And I think, I wonder if it's kind of like that when it relates to sexual immorality. What's moral? What's acceptable? What's a good girl do? What's a good girl or a good boy do, or a good girl? What's a bad boy or a bad girl, right? Like, how do we define what is good and bad? And it was like a genuine question, because I was thinking to myself, because to me, just at first bluff, like an orgy sounds bad. Like that that sounds like, oh, that's naughty, right? Okay. But is it? Like, is it? I mean, clearly, according to the Bible, they were doing all that kind of stuff too. Like, hello, like hello. Okay, so, but why would we view that now as immoral? I mean, is it immoral? Again, if everybody's consenting, everybody's agreed, everybody's, being smart, wearing protection, right? Because I think sometimes things were said, touted as wrong or immoral, really because they didn't know how else to. In other words, if you didn't have protection and you're with a bunch of different people, I mean, you're spreading disease, right? And if this person's chemistry doesn't match with this other person's chemistry, and it causes an infection, then they're just like, don't do that, right? So I often wonder if these things were, how do I say this? They were done and called sinful, not because actually the act or the thing was sinful, as much as what could happen as a result. Let's just bring up something that's so easy for us to understand. Let's just say if the Bible said, keep your doors closed, it's sinful to not close your door. Okay, you're like, well, that's weird. Okay, but if that was because animals could come into your house and cause havoc and or even kill you if your doors were open, this was a protection thing. This was about protection. This was about being smart. So they said, close your door. If you keep your door open, it's sinful. Well, is it truly keeping your door open that's sinful? Or is it that they're trying to get you to close your door so as not to get eaten by a pack of wolves? Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying? So, I often wonder if, and again, the Bible's not the moral standard anyway, right? It's just not. We could write a document today that would be much, much, much better than the Bible. In fact, we have a lot of morals that aren't in the Bible or supported in the Bible. Slavery's in the Bible. We now realize that's immoral. God apparently supported slavery in the Bible, or at least didn't condemn it. Come on, you can't argue with that. It is in there. Okay, so, but what is moral for me? What is moral for you? Again, if you're homosexual, well, clearly for me, it would be wrong because I'm not gay, right? But for you to be heterosexual, that wouldn't be right because that's not you. So am I making any sense here? I'm kind of rambling a little bit because I want you to cuss and discuss this down below. Where do you think that we get our sexual morality from, and what is right and what is wrong? I know, like we think of people that are in open marriages and we're like, oh, I can't believe they're in an open marriage, or, oh, I can't believe they're swingers. But a couple things. Like, I'm not a swinger. I've never been a swinger. Not ever going to be a swinger. Okay, so that's just not my jam. But I've met other people who do it. They're swingers. The husband and wife both agree. That's the key. that would be the only way that could work. It's like, if you're in a marriage or a committed partnership, I can't say, hey, we're going to swing. And then if you say, no, I don't want to, and I don't want you to, and you say, well, I'm going to do it anyway. Well, that's clearly wrong. That's a breaking of the agreement between two people. So like, I would say that's wrong. But if your partner is like, yeah, no, I want to swing too, like I want to do this too, and I do too. I'm cool if you do it, and you're cool if I do it, and I'm cool if I do it, right? And you're cool if you do it. So we're good. Right? Again, cuss and discuss this below. I'm very curious where that line is, because when you think of morality, it's, right from wrong, good and bad, but it is relative, right? Because what's good for one person might not be good for another person. I even think about marijuana use, or even alcohol for that matter. Anything. For me, I'm a purist. I'm not a big drinker just because it's poison. I'm not into poisoning my body, but I like a good wine or a good whiskey. I'm not definitely like a good craft cocktail for sure. But I much rather prefer the devil's lettuce. Like I just prefer that. No hangovers. You feel fine in the morning. At least I do. But also, at my age, I'm not into partying, right? I'm just not a partier. Like for me to party would be to have like two old fashions. Like if I have 2 glasses of wine or 2 old fashions, I'm toast, baby. I mean, I'm good. That's all I can handle. Any more than that, and the next day I'm feeling like crap, no matter how much water I drink. So, but that's just me. That's just a personal thing, right? I have other people that they like to party, and that's fine. As long as you're not driving under the influence, as long as you're not doing anything stupid, not hurting anybody, like clearly all of that. So when I think of morality, am I thinking right? Like what works for me? Often I think how we view life. I think when I think about how we decide morality, sometimes I think we're kind of like, what I like, or what I understand, or the things that I understand that are right for me, that should be right for everybody, right? And I don't think the world works like that. I don't. Yeah, I mean, just what would work for one person sexually might not work for another person sexually, and so, and I was raised in a culture. I mean, here's just how naive I was. I was taught as a very, I remember pretty early on. Anytime I forget how I even heard about this, but the whips and chains, S&M, kind of kinky stuff. Okay, kinky stuff. That was all the devil. Like that's what I was told. Like that's all the devil. That's the devil, and it stems from abuse. That's it. That's all I was told. So I always thought any and all of that stuff was the devil. That's the devil seeping into people's sexuality, or it's an outflow from some abuse. Now, clearly, maybe, yeah, some things can be an outflow of abuse, I suppose. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist. That makes sense to me. Some things could, but I know a lot of people that now that I've met in my life that they're down for some S&M, some handcuffs, some feathers, some tickles, some leather straps, and like different things. People are into different stuff. Hey, man, listen, you do you, right? As long as it's consensual, no one's being hurt, and it's safe. I mean, on and on and on. Come on, right? You've seen 50 Shades of Grey. You've read Twilight. Come on. Okay, I never read Twilight. Never read 50 Shades of Grey. Saw the movies. Yeah, saw the movies, of course. Who hasn't seen the movies? You got to watch the movies. The Twilight movies aren't bad. The 50 Shades of Grey and the 50 Shades of Grayer, or whatever the second, I've never seen maybe a third one. I don't know. I think I've seen them all. They're very fascinating. I mean, if you're up for a good time, watch them. But even on that, when it comes to that kind of stuff, like what's appropriate, what right? I mean, again, I I view things a lot different now. I'm definitely, not viewing things like I viewed it way back in my Christian days. But some of that Christian influence, sometimes I do think, ooh, being leather strapped up and being, you know, whatever, all the different stuff. Like, ooh, like that's kinky, that's naughty, that's the devil, she wants to be spanked. I don't know. That seems like right. Right. Like, I'm just being honest, guys. Like, that to me, it was not now. Whatever a couple agrees on doing and for each other and with each other is, again, as long as it's fun and you're having fun and it's enjoyable for everybody. Like, hey, you do you, man. Like, for real, or do them, whatever. Anyway, you know what it means. So, but like, where do we get our morality, especially when it comes to sexual morality? What is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, and is there such a thing, right? Or do people just do things, and some things are healthier for us and some things are unhealthy? you know i i i, I know that a lot of the things that I thought were wrong, and so many things like smoking, drinking, cussing, rated R movies, Disney, Pokemon, rock music. I mean, so, dancing. Like, obviously, all the stuff that I grew up believing was sin, gambling, sin. Um, Obviously, I don't even believe in sin anymore. I believe in wrongdoing, but that's different than sin. Sin is a religious concept, like God, says this and that. Like, that's all BS. I don't believe in any of that. Clearly, there is wrongdoing. Now, clearly, right? Can each of the things I just mentioned become a problem? Well, of course. Yeah. Can you drink too much? Well, duh. Of course you can drink too much. I mean, you could smoke too much weed. You could take too many Tylenol. You know what I mean? You could you could eat too much. You could drink too much water, even, right? Someone recently saw some news story. Some woman died drinking almost 2 gallons of water, and she died. Like, so, like, too much of anything, I guess, can be unhealthy and not good for you. So, clearly gambling's not a sin. Again, sin doesn't exist, but I'm using that terminology because I know many Christians understand that terminology, and many of you understand that terminology too. That's why I use it. But it's like, well, of course, gambling's not a sin. It's not wrong. Now, if it's taking away from you feeding your family and it's causing financial strain, well, yeah, I think that's wrong, right? Especially if you have kids and a wife or a husband, and you're supposed to, if it's impacting in a negative way those around you, well, then, that's when I think it's very questionable. But I think it's the same thing with anything. What is moral? And let's just be honest here. I mean, how many pastors have we heard? I mean, countless pastors that have just scandal after scandal after scandal. I mean, I could do a whole video on all the scandals from TV evangelists and preachers. I mean, sexual scandals, right? They have a wife, yet they have a male prostitute on the side. They have a wife, they pastor a church, and they're sleeping with prostitutes. I mean, I can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about that. Okay. So, clearly Christians are just doing the same things that everybody else is doing. Okay. Christians just don't talk about it, and they keep it to themselves, or they try to, until they get caught. And then it's public, anyway. So whatever, that's something to get a call. I don't want to call. I should have put my phone on airplane mode. So determining morality, I guess when it comes to sexual morality, and I said this in the other video. So let me just tell you, like, because I have kids. My 23-year-old son who's single. We've talked about it. And what do I tell him? I tell him, hey, buddy, I believe sex is something special. So treat it as such. And just my opinion, it's better celebrated or experienced with someone that you find special. Sex is special. Find someone special to share that special moment with. I tell them that. But I also have told them, hey, man, have a good time. Just be smart, right? Like, protect yourself, like, for sure. Like, but, and obviously, like, do you have fun, live life. Does my opinion, what does that come from? I would guess, I just have to guess, obviously 48 years as a Christian has made sex, I view sex as very sacred, and not in a religious way, clearly, but I believe sex is something special. I just do. Now, does that come from my Christian teaching? Maybe, maybe it does. Maybe it does. Very likely could. That, I do view sex as something special. So I think it's something special to share with someone. I think it's something that if you're going to do that with someone, that it's special. Not just special because for you, but special also for them. It's a vulnerable thing to do. It's an awesome thing. I mean, come on. Can I have an amen, somebody? Like, right? I mean, it's a wonderful, beautiful thing to experience, to celebrate, and to engage in. It's just like, it's magical. It's wonderful. So treat it as such. That really is my thought. Now, again, I listened to a podcast the other day. It was actually Michael Shermer, the Michael Shermer Show. He interviewed some sex worker. I thought this was fascinating, which I did that on my podcast. So I don't know if you guys know this, but I actually have a podcast on Spotify. I hardly ever do anything on it anymore because I switched over to YouTube, and I'm so new at all this. I don't know how to put my actual podcast over here onto YouTube yet. I know, guys, I'm so new to all this. But anyway, if you go over to Spotify, just search my name, Timmy Gibson. You'll find it. And in fact, you could actually witness a part of my deconstruction in real time. My deconstruction, like, in real time, because I started the podcast in 2020. So this was early in my deconstruction process. So literally in real time, you could go through and really probably get some nuggets of information that you would really find very helpful, because all of that is, now where I am has been a long, 6-year journey, longer than that, but 6-year journey. And starting in 2020 on my podcast is when I started talking about it. So anyway, just like I said, Timmy Gibson Show over on Spotify, or anywhere you find a podcast, I think you can find it. Anyway, I lost my train of thought now because I was rambling about that. But yeah, just so, I view sex as something special. And because I think it's something special, I think it should be treated as such. But, Michael Shermer Show. He interviewed a sex worker, which I did too on my podcast. That's what I was trying to get to. I interviewed a male porn star. Very fascinating interview. So on Michael Shermer Show, he talked to the sex worker, and she talked about how she just has always loved sex, and she loves casual sex. That's what she loves. And she's like, hey, why not get paid for it? And so she makes a really good living as a sex worker. Okay. So now, what's my opinion on that? Hey, I think it should be legal. I think it should be regulated, and women should be protected, or men, whoever's in it, be protected. And that's just my opinion. It's what I think. Now, but then if you ask me, Timmy, would you want your daughter being a prostitute? No, absolutely not. Right? I wouldn't want my daughter to be a stripper. Right? But I have some some female friends who are strippers, that or have stripped and made great money, and they had to do it because they had a baby at home and they needed less hours and more money. And so, listen, I don't judge nobody. You do you, right? But I'm just going to be very honest with you. Yeah, no, I wouldn't want my daughter doing that. Not at all. But not because it's sinful. Not because there's a place called hell or that God would be disappointed. It has nothing to do with that. There's other reasons for that, and I don't want to get into that right now because it doesn't matter. It's just I wouldn't like that for my daughter. But if someone's into that, like this person on the Michael Shermer show, I wish I would have pulled it up. I could have given you her name, but go to the Michael Shermer show. It's been within the last month or two. This interview is fascinating because she talked about how she loves casual sex. She really enjoys it. She prefers it and whatever. So who am I to say anything about someone else's sexual behavior? Like, if it's working for you and it brings you joy and happiness and, again, consensual, and like, I don't really have much of an opinion. But I can tell you that my perspectives and my thoughts and my ideas, especially like when I was talking about the S&M stuff, I have a dungeon down in my in my basement with mirrors on the ceiling. Nothing wrong with any of that. Nothing wrong with any of that. In fact, that'd be cool, right? I mean, that whatever. I obviously don't think it's wrong in any way. Now, if it's against someone's will, clearly, if it's it's got to be consensual. I think that, to me, that's when it comes down to morality, especially sexual morality, it comes down to you do you, as long as it's consensual and safe and not hurting anyone, right? Again, cuss and discuss below. Give me your thoughts, give me your ideas. I said this on the other video. Clearly I don't believe in the concept of don't have sex until you're married. Like, I just think that's just, again, even those that say they believe it, they didn't do it. I can't tell you how many very, very, very few people get married as virgins, even those who tout virginity until married. Like, I just can't. Listen, I was in the world, like in that world, in the Christian world. I knew what was going on at Bible college between men and women. Like, okay, like, and between men and men, and between women and women, and between, like, there's a lot of shenanigans going on. Even in a place like Bible college, people are just sinning left and right, glory to God, and then just going to the altar on Sunday and, Jesus, forgive me for my sins. Okay, that's the roller coaster you have to be on when you're an evangelical Christian. You live life and you do things like everybody does, and then you repent of it and you feel bad for it, say you'll never do it again, and then you do it again, of course, and then you repent of it and you say you're sorry and you cry, and guilt and shame, guilt and shame, guilt and shame, guilt and shame. All right. Thanks for staying until this point, listening to me ramble, rant, and rave. Cuss and discuss below. Let me know what your thoughts are on sexual morality. What's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. Is there such a thing? And obviously there is such a thing as good and bad. I mean, I think we could all agree there are certain things that would be right, certain things that would be wrong. I think we could all agree on that, right? And I don't even need to talk about those things here. But where's the line when it comes to, like, if two consenting adults agree on something together that's not going to hurt anyone else, is there anything wrong with that? Right? Like, remember, I mentioned this in another video. I was taught that oral sex was a sin. Like, that was wrong. You weren't supposed to do it. Right? Mouths were meant for kissing. That's meant for something else. Okay, so is that wrong? Like, if you're in a relationship with someone and you want to engage in oral pleasure, like, is that wrong? Well, I mean, obviously, I know it's not wrong. It's clearly not wrong. I know that. I'm just saying, right? But is it, right? Like, some Christians would think that it is. Again, I was also told that sex was for procreation purposes only. I mentioned that too earlier in another video. Sex was only for having children. If you weren't going to have children, you weren't to engage in it, but only if you wanted children were you to engage in it, right? So then I guess if someone couldn't have children, so they should never engage in it, right? So anyway, very squirrely. Cuss, discuss below. Like, subscribe, do all the stuff. So appreciate you listening. Every Wednesday, every Sunday, I'll keep pumping these videos out. I want to do a live video at some point, but I got to think about the topics I want to talk about and how to figure out a way to do some kind of call in, because it'd be fun to have a call in too. So, all right, guys, peace.